Tesla's full self-driving 10.8 beta is an amazing upgrade to the experience of full self-driving, and it really can drive about 99+% of the time on its own. So I drive with it every day, right? Well, no, not really, and here's why. For those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $2,300. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I actually have an announcement about Patreon, a fairly big announcement about it. It's at the end of the video, so if you're interested, definitely stick around and watch that at the end part of it. But of course, first, let's talk about the subject du jour. As I'm sure most of you who watch this channel regularly already know, I love Full Self-Driving Beta 10.8. I think Tesla has got an amazing piece of software here, and it looks like they're actually going to be releasing 10.9 first. I actually thought they were going to jump to version 11, but Elon Musk yesterday tweeted out that they're going to do a 10.9 first, and that's going to be released about a week from when I do this video-ish. And then it will be next month, early February, before they do version 11. And version 11 is a really, really big deal because it's a single stack for all driving. And I've done other videos on that as well, but the very, very short version of that is that the highway driving is different from the city street driving, is different from parking lot driving, etc. So putting it all under one stack, I expect there will be a little bit of regression, especially in the highway driving, because it's really, really good right now. But that again gives them a huge amount of headroom so that they can move up and improve their driving very rapidly. So anyway, version 11 is going to be a really big deal. I don't know how big a deal 10.9 is going to be, but we will have to wait and see. But anyway, I tout version 10.8 beta. I talk about how great it is and everything, and yet I use it for maybe 50%-ish of the driving that I do, and it's not actually individual drives unless I'm actually doing a video on it or something like that. It tends to be broken up into pieces. So anyway, I'm going to explain all of that in this video, and I'm going to explain the reasons why I don't use Full Self-Driving 10.8 always when I go out for a drive. All right, so I think the first thing to do is to give some full self-disclosure here about my driving habits, because I think if I was a certain type of driver, I would actually use Full Self-Driving Beta much more than I do currently. But number one, I'm a very, very impatient driver. If I'm 30 seconds later than I realize that I could have been by taking a slightly different route or taking a different lane or getting into an empty lane at a red light so that I can move up to the head of the traffic at the next light, all of those sorts of things I think about all the time. I am not a chill driver at all. I'm very, very impatient. Of course, connected to that is I like to go fast. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm exceeding the speed limit by some outrageous amount or something like that, but I tend to accelerate relatively quickly. I keep the car in standard mode, not in chill mode, even though, except for when we do road trips or something, when I'm trying to eke out every single mile. But under normal circumstances, I keep it in standard mode. And of course, if I had the performance version of the Model Y, I would have it in sport mode almost definitely. So I do like to accelerate off the line relatively quickly. I also like to really never, ever, ever touch the brakes. I do one pedal driving. So on the opposite end, I try never to brake hard. I always try to like ease into things. So that's sort of my driving style. I also really detest bad driving, and that's both for me and for everybody else. I'm extremely unforgiving. If you've ever been in a car with me, you will hear me denigrate all the other drivers around me as they do bad things. I'll be like, that's just an idiotic drive that person just did or something like that. And if I make the same mistake, I will definitely curse myself out for doing the same thing too. And of course, the last piece of this puzzle that may not surprise anybody is that I stress a lot about hurting other people and, damaging other people's cars, and then of course damaging my very, very expensive toy, my Model Y. So taking all of these pieces of my personality together, you probably can start to see why I'm not particularly interested in driving the Full Self-Driving Beta all the time. But let's talk specifics, because I have a feeling that there's some things that you may not even think about, at least if you don't use Full Self-Driving Beta yourself. So the first thing that I think about all the time, and this is something that's probably going to make people go like, what? is the fact that Full Self-Driving does not go into reverse. So you have to be pointing into a direction where you can go forward in order to engage full self-driving. So you're thinking like, what the hell? Why does he care about that or not? Well, the number one thing is when I'm parked in my garage, I park head in. So I have to reverse out of the garage and then I have to pull forward to get out of my driveway and to go about my business. So that means that I'm always going backwards when I start. I'm always going into reverse. And in, most parking lots, unless you can do that little cheat thing where you can kind of head through, or if there's nobody in the other parking space, you pretty much have to reverse out of that parking space to begin your journey wherever you're going. And it's a weird thing, but just that little moment, like if I could get in the car and immediately say engage autopilot, I would be more likely to use it in those early scenarios than I am currently, because once I've put it in reverse and started driving myself, it's just sort of a natural extension for me to keep on driving it myself. So that is one fairly big thing. I don't know if version 11 is going to enable reversing, but I think that the version that does enable reversing will cause me to begin more journeys in full self-driving and therefore continue to do them in full self-driving. The second, and actually very, very large reason why I don't use full self-driving for big chunks of my drives, and this is somewhat unique. It's not, I would not imagine a ton of people have this same sort of circumstance, but maybe you have something that's analogous to this. But basically, I can only go out one way from my house. There's only one exit onto this road, and from there, you have to make a left turn to get into the city. So unless I'm going to Atlanta, where I would make a right, everything is a left-hand turn. It's onto a very busy road, and there's a whole bunch of stoplights that come up because it's a commercial district. So the route that I choose to take is to go around behind a mall, which officially I guess is a parking lot, because it seems to be that's what Tesla thinks it is. It doesn't think it's an actual road, but it's a 4-lane road that nobody's ever on with a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. And what I can do is, by going back that way and taking kind of a loop around, even though it's slightly longer than the other way, I avoid 3 traffic lights and only have to pop out for 1 second on this road before I can get on the highway to go where I need to go. So I like to do that route. The Tesla will not do that route. It doesn't recognize that as a possible road, and I can't tell it to go that way. So that's a big problem. So the fact that you've got the Tesla is saying like, I have to go this way that's going to involve multiple lights, as opposed to going this way, which I know is faster, even though it doesn't officially look that way. The Tesla just won't do that. And so the fact that I have to turn manually to get onto this back road and I can't somehow tell Tesla to always go this way, that would be really, really nice if I could just say like, whenever you leave the house, go this route, unless I tell you otherwise. That would be really wonderful. And that would cause me to use full self-driving a lot more, because I always have to disengage it about 1.5 miles after leaving my house when I make that turn and go into the parking lot, but actually a road around the mall. And what's worse about this, because you may think, okay, once I've made the turn and it realizes that it's gonna have to go the other way, I can engage autopilot again. But the problem is, even though it's a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on this thing, I think that the car thinks it's a parking lot, because it refuses to see the speed limit sign. Even though I pass it, it still says 15 miles an hour, and it will not allow me to override that setting. So I'm not gonna go 15 miles an hour around the back end of the mall where nobody else is and the speed limit is 25. 30 is about the speed that I go, because that's a reasonable speed for, driving under those conditions. And really, sadly enough, it's kind of a dead mall, so there's really nobody there, and it's the backside, so there's literally nobody else around except other people who do like I do, which is, sort of cheating instead of that main traffic area. So anyway, it's a fairly unique situation. But the combination of the car not just being belligerent about the fact that it won't learn this route, or it won't give that as a possibility, and the fact that it sets the speed limit at 15 miles an hour and will not override that. Even if I tell it to go 25 or 30 miles an hour, it just ignores that, and it ignores the speed limit sign. So all of those things together mean that every single drive, unless I'm just like committed to doing the full self-driving beta test or something, I have to disengage it at this point, and I have to go around this back way, and I can't re-engage it until I get up to the light where I'm about to turn onto the highway. And speaking of speed limits, Teslas are really, really dumb about this. Again, I don't understand why it can't use the Google Maps speed limits when it doesn't see a speed limit. When I turn out onto the back road that's not in my neighborhood, but the one that's in front of it, the speed limit is actually 50 miles an hour there. and yet there is not signs very consistently, and so the car insists on saying it's 25 miles an hour until it sees the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. One direction it actually never sees that, and so I always have to manually tell it to go to 50 miles per hour. Otherwise, it will just drive 25 to 30 miles an hour the whole way, which is super, super annoying. And this happens over and over and over again. I'm sure I'm not the only one that's noticed this. It's like until it actually sees a speed limit sign, it assumes some default value, which often is either 25 miles an hour or 35 miles an hour, which is just kind of dumb because, again, they use Google Maps, as far as I understand it, as the sort of basis for all of this. So when it turns onto a road until it actually sees a speed limit sign, it should just access the Google Maps, version of that. Apple Maps has it, Waze has it, Google Maps has it. I'm sure every other mapping system has that. They already know what the speed limit is for each of these roads. And so I don't understand why Tesla can't do that until it sees a speed limit sign, right? So if Google Maps tells it it's 50, it should go 50 until it sees a speed limit sign that contradicts that. So again, I just don't understand why it can't use that. It's a very, very annoying aspect of Tesla. And I really, really hope that the engineers can fix that one soon. And then the one other thing about my unique route, which is kind of unusual, but again, it's probably something that I wouldn't really avoid using full self-driving for, but in combination with these other things, it's a problem, is that I've got this weird situation where I have a stop sign that's here, and then the actual line to stop is up here. So there's about, I don't know, maybe 3 meters or something like that between where the stop sign is and where the actual line to stop is, because it says stop sign, then there's kind of like a brick thing, and then there's the line where I have to actually go out to the road to actually stop, and then I turn onto the road. And it's just annoying because what it does is the car stops at the stop sign and then creeps very slowly forward out until the line itself, as opposed to moving up to the line to stop and then look around to see if it can go. And if I'm driving on my own and nobody's behind me, I'll often let it do that. But if somebody's behind me, I'm not going to make them sit there and wait while the car goes like up to the line and actually decides to go. Okay, so all of these things are fairly unique to me. And so you may say, yeah, okay, so fine. In my situation, I wouldn't encounter this stuff, so I would go ahead and use it. But another thing that's problematic for me is that the car is just not assertive enough. And I have it in assertive mode, but it tends to get stuck in certain situations where it's stuck in a lane that's not as fast as another lane. I'm the kind of person who, if I see 3 cars stopped at a stoplight in the right lane and 2 cars stopped at the stoplight in the left lane, I will always go into the left lane unless it's a truck or some sort of situation is different. But basically, I'm always looking for a little advantage to get there faster. And like I said, this is just me as a personality. My wife is much more chill. She's happy to be in whatever lane she's in. And so she is much happier to just let the full self-driving beta kind of just take its course and do its thing. But me being an impatient driver, I'm like, hey, I could lose seconds by being in this lane as opposed to this lane. So I will go into the other lane. So again, the full self-driving, even if I have it in assertive mode, is not assertive enough for me. And this lack of assertiveness actually kind of ties into another thing, which is poor moment-to-moment route planning. So for example, you're on a busy road with like 2 lanes or something and actually a 3rd turn lane. Oftentimes the Tesla will get itself into the left lane, and you'll see on the navigation that it knows it has to get into the right lane to exit onto the highway, but it won't try to get over the 2 lanes that it needs to get over until the last possible minute. And Georgia drivers are just not the kind of people who are going to let you in. So the car will often get stuck, and if I let it go, it will just keep on going and have to reroute itself. And that's super annoying. So very, very often, if I do have it in full self-driving mode, I will take it out of full self-driving about like a 1/4 of a mile or a couple of 100 meters before I know I need to turn, and I will manually get myself over to the highway entrance lane. So that's short-term planning kind of stuff. But another thing that's actually rather annoying with Tesla Maps, and I don't understand this because it's based on Google Maps, is it's not learning. My Google Maps or Waze or whatever and my Apple Maps, every time when I get in the car, they suggest the place that I am likely to go. So like, my Apple Map will get in there and it'll say, hey, it looks like you're probably going to go to the gym based on the time that you're doing this. Or, hey, it looks like it's likely that you're going to go to work. And it's not right 100% of the time, but let's say 80% of the time it's right. So that's actually really convenient, right? I would like to get into the Tesla and say, hey, it's Monday morning at 7:30, the likelihood is that you're going to your son's school, and after you drop him off, you're going to go to the gym, because that's what I do on Monday mornings. So for example, Apple Maps already has figured that out. And when I look at the phone, it goes like, it looks like you're probably going to go to your son's school, and it automatically maps that out. What the Tesla does instead is every morning, inevitably, it says, I want to go to work. And so it puts in that I'm going to work, which I almost never do directly. I almost always go someplace else first. So it's actually doubly annoying because not only is it not guessing the right thing, but it's guessing the absolute wrong thing. So I have to cancel that and then I have to put in something else in order to take full self-driving, right? If I just drive myself, I can just do it myself. So that extra couple of clicks and those moments of waiting for it to reroute itself and for thinking about where I'm going to go and all of that means that I'm less likely to take full self-driving because I'm like, I'll just do it myself, right? It's no big deal. It's only a 15-minute drive. I'll just go ahead and handle it. So that part is surprisingly annoying, and it's actually kind of surprising coming from Tesla. They have this massive AI team that is working on some of the hardest problem solving in the world, and yet they don't seem to have a subdivision that can just go and do some really, really basic learning stuff, right? It's like all you have to do is just look at where I drive every day of the week for like 2 or 3 weeks, and you could get a pretty good estimate. Between 80 and 90% of the time you would know where I was going to go. So all of these little annoyances and, problematic situations are the reason why I don't use full self-driving 10.8 all the time. Now, I will tell you, as soon as I get on the highway, every single time I put on full self-driving. And I know that's the old stack and it's using the old thing, but it's really, really good. And, I usually have to drive somewhere between 5 and 8 miles, or like 8 to 14 kilometers or something like that, depending on what you're doing. So anyway, it's not a huge amount of time, but it's enough time that if I have to drive it myself, I find it super annoying now. So as soon as I get on the highway, I put it into autopilot and I let it just do its thing. But of course, because I'm an impatient driver, I don't usually wait for the car to decide that it wants to get out of the lane. Sometimes it does it pretty well, other days it doesn't. So in any case, it only involves me pushing the little turn signal down and then it like goes into the correct lane. One of the big problems, of course, is that on the highway, and I'm really, really hoping that the version 11 with the single stack will do this better, it's again not route planning properly. So when somebody's merging in, when you see that there's a merge lane coming up and you're in the right-hand lane, which is where you should be correctly to not be in the fast lane, but you know that there's cars that are going to be merging into that lane, you're going to cause a snarl up if you don't just get into the left lane. So the car will not do that on its own, so I always have to manually tell it, like, get out of the way. And then sometimes it's trying to get back into the right lane again, and I'm like, no, there's cars that are coming in. So again, it's a little bit of an annoyance, and it means that I'm not completely using full self-driving when I'm on the highway, but mostly I'm using full self-driving on the highway. So I've now explained basically what's going on and the reasons why I don't use full self-driving 100% of the time. When will I use full self-driving 100% of the time? I think that moment will come when I'm fully a passenger, right? So if my wife is driving, for example, and I'm a passenger and she does what she does, right? She drives the way she does, which is a very different style than me, but I'm not sitting there moment by moment judging her, although I actually am. But in general, I can go to sleep, I can read a book, I can look out the window, I can play a game on my phone. I'm a passenger, right? Once I get to the part where even if I'm required to sit in the driver's seat, if the car itself is not requiring me to jiggle the steering wheel or look at the road, so, full level 4 autonomy, when it gets to that point, I'll be a lot more forgiving. I'll be like, you do you, and I'll do my thing, right? So I'll look at my phone, I'll play a game, I'll get some work done, I'll answer some emails or something, and I'm not gonna be paying so much attention to the road. But the problem is right now, I still have to be fully engaged because even when the thing is doing its full self-driving thing, I, of course, am responsible for it, and it might do something stupid at any moment. So I'm, really, really focused on the road. I'm making sure I'm jiggling the steering wheel once in a while, all of that kind of stuff. So since I'm that engaged anyway, the likelihood that I will disengage full self-driving, navigate on autopilot beta is much, much higher than it would be if I was just completely disengaged from everything and I was doing my own thing, right? So that's the moment when the switchover will happen. The interesting thing to me is that in the meantime, what we've got is this cool sort of situation that, some of us on Discord, my Patreons and I, are calling a hybrid driving situation. And what that means is it's like the full self-driving stack is doing its thing and I'm doing my thing, and we're sort of blending those things together and creating a better driver than either of us would be alone, or at least a driver that I don't have to pay as much attention to the road and get stressed out and get tired from driving, but I still am taking over when I know I need to, right? So like the situation of going around behind the mall and taking the parking lot, even though it's actually a road. But anyway, that sort of thing, I will drive. But when I get on the highway, the car is driving itself. But then if I want to get out of the way of a merge lane or some obviously slow traffic that's coming up, I click the little stalk to tell it to turn, and it gets out of the way. So we're sort of creating this like little cyborgy sort of thing, right? We've got the car and we've got the human, and we're melding together to create what is not necessarily a better driver than me personally, but it's a driver that is almost as good as I am, where I'm not having to pay attention all the time. So it relieves a lot of the responsibility of driving off of my shoulders, while at the same time still allowing me to take over and to drive it well or more efficiently under those specific circumstances where I know it's needed. So anyway, I hope that helps to explain how all of this is working. And I think that this hybridized driving is going to become a very common thing over the next couple of years. So even when Tesla achieves level 4 autonomy, it's not going to have regulatory approval to do that. And in that interim time between now and when it actually gets approval, where you don't have to pay attention to the road anymore, most drives, I have a feeling, unless people are doing videos for their Tesla YouTube channel or something, most drives will be a hybridized type of drive. And I've talked to other people who use full self-driving, and that is a tendency for them to do that too. And what happens is, especially on routes that you kind of know when you're going to have to take it out of full self-driving before you even get there. So for the most part, you kind of disengage it, you drive that part of the drive that you know is going to be better with you driving, then you re-engage it, and it drives the part that it's handling perfectly fine. And it's a really cool system. And I think that's actually really neat that that's kind of the, this idea of a cyborg or something is actually functionally happening with us driving our cars. So very, very cool overall. And this is taking nothing away from Tesla. I think the full self-driving beta 10.8 is absolutely incredible. And it actually will get there, right? For the most part, except for that thing about getting over into the proper lane early enough sometimes. And it will reroute if it doesn't do that. So it'll get you there eventually. It's just not going to be the most efficient way to get there. And that's the reason why, because I'm an impatient driver, that I won't have it engaged all the time unless I'm specifically testing out the beta software. So I'd be really interested to hear what you all think, especially if you're driving the full self-driving beta. Let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to know what you think about that and whether you have a tendency to drive the same way or whether you drive a completely different way with your full self-driving beta or with your regular full self-driving. And in the meantime, if you do enjoy this video, please do like it so other people can find it, because AI, YouTube's algorithm works that way. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content, and because it helps out the channel, so thank you. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons on Patreon. And the big announcement is that we now have tiers on Patreon. So there's actually 4 tiers. You can join at the sort of no tier level for like any amount of money you want to do. But at $5 US and whatever these, whatever these transfer into your local currency. But for $5 US, there is the kilowatt support level. $10 a month is the megawatt support level. $25 a month is the gigawatt support level. And $40 per month is the terawatt support level. So I thought that'd be kind of cool to have the levels, based on charge, etc. So what do you get? Well, for the first level, any level, kilowatt through terawatt, you get access to Discord and to all the discussions and all of that kind of stuff that we have. So thank you so much for your support at any of those levels. If you choose to support me at a lower level, it's no problem, but you just don't get access to Discord and things like that. And of course, for anyone who has already signed up at any level, that's totally not a problem. Keep doing what you're doing. That's all good. And you get, the support and all of that stuff that you already had. At the gigawatt support level, you will get your name in small font at the end of every single video. And at the terawatt support level, you get your name as a producer at a large font at the end of every single video. So I hope that will help people to understand how they can help out the channel better and get a little bit of a reward from it at the same time. One other announcement that's tied to this, which is a little bit of a bummer, but I kind of have to do it, is that the drknowitallknows@gmail.com email address, I'm going to turn that into only business requests and such, because it's just become too much. I can't handle it all. So anyway, if you want to have direct contact with me, the way to do that, of course, is to support me on Patreon at any of these levels that you want to use, kilowatt through terawatt. So thank you all so much, and I hope you understand that this is something I need to do. And of course, if you want to join, please do check out the link in the description. Thank you. And if you're interested in some awesome merch, check out the link in the description. We've got the Tesla Bot t-shirt, which is super popular these days. Don't mess with Tesla. Lots of other t-shirts, tumblers, mugs, etc. So check out the link in the description and help the channel out. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $2,300. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Thank you. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. Till next time, bye-bye.